If you and two of your best friends gained a magical ability that allowed you to publish one indie game per day, and you started on January 1st, you'd be able to replicate the entire library of the indies released on Steam in 2014 by mid-October. That's just over 9 months. A long time, sure, but you're done in time for the holidays. Next, let's give you a different task. How long do you think it would take to replicate the number of indies published on Steam in 2024? 2 years? 4? Maybe 5? What if I told you that the three of you would have to make 3 games a day, every single day, for nearly 8 full years? This is the number of indie games that came out in 2014, and this is the number of indies that came out just last year. I want to show you a deeper look into this because we've reached a point where there's almost nothing a AAA game can do that an indie can't replicate or even surpass. There is an exception, and we'll get there, but for now, I want you to think about an indie game in your head. What do you see? Assuming you don't have Aphantasia, you're probably picturing something with pixel art, maybe a procedurally generated roguelike or a Metroidvania. Regardless of exactly what it is you see, if you're anything like me, you do not imagine something that looks like this. What you're looking at right now is an indie game currently in development by exactly one guy. It's called VA Proxy. We'll get back to VA Proxy in a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. Punishing Gray Raven, the free-to-play style-heavy action RPG, is currently making what was, to me, a shocking yet extremely fitting addition to the game. Dante from Devil May Cry 5. Oh, and Virgil's here too. Devil May Cry 5 is considered by many to have the best 3D combat of any melee-focused action game, and Punishing Gray Raven is considered by many to have the best 3D combat of any free-to-play game, so naturally this is a perfect fit. But PGR takes things a step further by directly using the character's moves from the game itself. In fact, if I showed you some footage from Devil May Cry 5, put it next to the collab, and then mixed them up a bit, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell which is which. But hey, maybe you could use the audio, right? I mean, it's not like Punishing Gray Raven got the actual voice actors for Dante and Virgil from Devil May Cry 5 to reprise their roles in this game, right? Yeah, that's exactly what they did. What's really special about this collab is that not only does Devil May Cry 5's combat perfectly fit in the style of Punishing Gray Raven, but thanks to the addition of the same attacks and even voice actors, it feels extremely authentic. It's as though these two iconic characters have found themselves in this new game. As the cherry on top, they even included a Virgil boss in Punishing Gray Raven as well, with the Trial of the Simulacrums event. Now, to actually obtain the characters in game is pretty simple. You just complete the Lamento di Fantasma collab story to get Dante for free, and after that you use 175 DMC character R&D tickets for 1 pull, a fair bit less than the usual 250. When you obtain Dante and Virgil for the first 2 times, you can get an additional copy of each. To make this even easier, to celebrate Punishing Gray Raven's 4th anniversary, they're offering 2,500 R&D tickets by simply logging into the game. You'll also get plenty of bonus rewards too, so go check out Punishing Gray Raven, since with this collaboration and the new events, this is the perfect time to try it out. Alright, back to VA Proxy. This is by no means a normal indie game. The overwhelming majority of indies look nothing like this. The sheer scale here is truly unbelievable, and simply seeing the footage really doesn't do the game justice. When you're actually in this world, walking around and seeing these inconceivably massive structures, you're granted a feeling that practically no other game, not even AAAs, can give you. It feels as though the monitor you're playing on has somehow grown to 10 times its size, like the world itself threatens to forcibly pull you in at any moment. It's like, you know those whale videos where a giant space whale eats the earth? Maybe that's a weird example. Better yet, in real life, when you see a mountain for the first time and you travel towards it, driving forward at a speed that you know is fast, and yet for some reason, the mountain doesn't change in size. It's as though time is just frozen, and no matter how close you get to this monolithic structure, it stands unchanging, almost like it's the background on some separate plane you'll never reach. That's what this game feels like. It is perhaps the first or second game I've ever played that genuinely fits the term overwhelming in scale. It's only got a demo right now, and I don't imagine the full game will be out for a while because, well, look at it. This isn't the type of game you can rush. Yet, even in this incomplete state, it stands as one of the most unique experiences you can have in the medium. The game isn't just megalophobia inducing though. There's a substance in the gameplay as well. The exploration feels more genuine than nearly any open world game. There are those moments in the best open world games where you stumble across a new area hidden just out of view. You'll enter a seemingly small cave and suddenly it opens up into what feels like a totally new world. Despite being a demo, this game somehow already has moments like that. Now, you wouldn't be crazy to believe that Virginia Proxy is basically just a walking simulator, but for some reason that I still can't fully wrap my head around, this game also casually has one of the best third-person melee combat systems of any indie game. I mean, just look at this. Or this. Or if you want some actual impressive gameplay, you can check out the devs' Twitter where they regularly share clips like this. The combat here feels like a cross between Sekiro, Devil May Cry, and Shadow of the Colossus. I really do mean it when I say I have never seen an indie, or quite frankly a video game like voice actor Proxy, and considering how much of a following this game that isn't even out already has, I'd imagine I'm not the only one. Alright, I know what you're thinking. Man, this video has been great so far, I should subscribe. But also, aren't indies kinda generic? They're all just roguelikes and Metroidvanias. Sure, this one's cool, but like you said, this is the exception and not the rule. And that, my friend, is a perfectly valid concern. So let's take a look at how they're circumventing this problem, and how in some cases, they're even using that oversaturation to their advantage in a way that AAA games constantly fail to do. Last year, this silly card game about making a number go up completely shocked the world with a nomination for Game of the Year. Anyone who didn't play it was confused as to how it snuck its way in there, but those who did knew exactly what happened. While I don't think that's going to happen again, there is a roguelike from this year that I've been enjoying even more than Balatro. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm going to use the terms roguelike and roguelite interchangeably. There is a difference, but it really doesn't matter here. Roguelikes are just such a fundamentally addicting genre that all you have to do is add some kind of unique spin, ensure that spin is fun, and you've probably got a hit on your hands. I mean, sure, you also have to worry about the marketing, the music, the art style actually making the game, which is a nightmare in its own right, but for the most part, that's basically all it takes, and it's probably why the genre's been so dominant in the indie scene for as long as it has. There is of course a problem that comes with this: oversaturation. And I've seen two different ways to solve it. The first is in the game I alluded to earlier, Haste. In this game, it all comes down to a few simple mechanics. Unlike most in this genre, there's no real combat in Haste. Not in the traditional sense at least. You don't have a sword, magic, or any type of fighting skills at all. You just run extremely fast. Hence the title. The goal of Haste is simple. You start here and go here. There is a reason you're in such a rush though. You don't only want to get a good time, you're also trying to outrun this all-consuming wave of that's rapidly distorting the entire universe. But when we take a closer look at the details here, we can quickly see why this game is so hard to put down. It all starts with what may be the most important mechanic in the entire game: landing. It's deceptively simple, but there's actually a lot here, and in understanding the basics, we can begin to piece together why this system is so extraordinary. There are 4 types of landings in Haste, and they're all based on the angle at which you hit the ground. To put it simply, the smoother your landing, the faster you go. The other benefit of these smooth landings is the energy gauge, which allows you to use abilities that will further increase your speed. Crucially, however, these abilities do require skill and deliberate thought. Using them at the perfect time in the right positions will grant you a significantly larger benefit than just doing so the moment you have enough energy. All of this together creates a positive feedback loop, a positive feedback loop of speed rewarding speed. The better you utilize these abilities, the more energy you gain, and the more energy you gain, the more you can use these abilities. Everything in this game loops around to that central idea of going fast. And while I could try to describe exactly what that feels like, maybe it's easier to just show you. If they exist, I'm sure someone in the comments will tell us, but to my knowledge, I don't know of any other 3D speed-based roguelikes similar to this one. Yet, if you've been paying attention, you've probably already noticed something strange here, even if only subconsciously. Had I not revealed it to you at the start, you probably wouldn't even know that this game is a roguelike. Haste, while exceptionally unique, has a personality and character as distinct as most of the best indie games. Sure, a lot of them are from similar genres, but how they tackle those genres clearly diverges from anything that came before them. And that's the first solution to oversaturation, creating something in that oversaturated genre that's never been seen before. All that said, while being different is important, originality is a bit overrated. I mean, just look at one of the most successful games this year, Expedition 33. Most things in this game were heavily inspired by other games. The UI is Persona, this mechanic is from Devil May Cry, the active turn-based system is from Mario RPGs, and even the premise is extremely similar to games like Xenoblade 3 or Final Fantasy X. Yet nobody really cares, since it both transforms these inspirations and, in some ways, masters them. That second one is a bit more nuanced, so let me show you an example from a smaller indie Metroidvania that has the exact same rating as Expedition 33 on Steam. Ender Magnolia. Much like E33, Ender Magnolia wears its inspirations on its sleeve. The charge shot from Metroid, the benches from Hollow Knight, and the air dash from literally every Metroidvania ever made. Yet it might do all of this better than any of the games that inspired it. Let me explain. Within the first 30 minutes of the game, you've already got a sprint, double jump, and an air dash. If you've played another Metroidvania, you know that most of these abilities are usually relegated to the second half of the game. In Magnolia, on the other hand, you gain all of them almost instantly. The game knows that the best part of movement in Metroidvanias bosses often comes after obtaining these abilities, so it just slides them to the start. Thanks to this change, movement is fun for basically the entire game. The map itself is absolutely massive, yet it never feels inconvenient due to the movement that you have access to. There are the little things like respawn points for bosses always being in the room before the boss, thereby preventing lengthy runbacks. The map will not only mark barriers that you've encountered with specific icons, but it'll also turn a section blue to let you know that you've collected everything in that area. It's filled with these little changes that feel like the game is respecting your time instead of wasting it. Taking things a step further though is my personal favorite aspect of Ender Magnolia, the combat. More specifically, something that you rarely see in Metroidvanias, variety in combat. Alright, hear me out, because there's a lot going on here. By virtue of playing as a small child, your character obviously cannot box. So when it comes to combat, they summon these homunculi to fight for them. Each one falls into one of 4 categories. Primaries are your default attack. They're your primary way of dealing damage. Cooldowns are your special attacks that, as the name suggests, go on cooldown after you use them. Pressure types are often ranged attackers that aim to deal consistent damage and apply pressure in situations that are otherwise too dangerous for primaries or cooldowns. Finally, auto attackers do exactly that, attack automatically under certain conditions. Now take a closer look at our very first homunculus, Nola. Not that close, relax. If we go into the menu, we find something rather interesting. We can upgrade her sword attack and make it stronger, however, we can also see these 2 other types of attacks, an axe and a scythe. Unlocking either of these will give you a new primary attack to use. This is basically just a new weapon with its own personal upgrades. So if this was all there was to the variety, 4 homunculi with 3 different forms, that would already be extremely impressive and allow this game to stand out in the genre. However, the actual number is around double that. This isn't even mentioning the status effects or the relic system or the equipment and attuner arts. Despite being in a genre where variety in combat isn't always a strong point, this game has variety that comes close to and in some ways even surpasses games like Dark Souls. But that's probably hard to believe, so the easiest way to demonstrate this is by taking a look at a boss. Don't worry, I won't be showing any story spoilers here, not even the boss's name, just some of their mechanics. So this boss moves extremely fast. Her primary game plan is to wall you out with an endless storm of projectiles that prevent you from getting close. You've got a few options here, so let's take a look at 3 of them. Option 1. Counter her more ranged heavy playstyle with your own. There are methods by which you can obtain a parry that launches a projectile, so maybe your strategy for this boss will be to use that parry, throw on a ranged attacker for your primary and cooldown, and finally finish the set with a ranged auto attacker and some relics that enhance your ranged attacks in some way. This effectively turns you into a ranged tank where you're constantly parrying anything she throws at you while sending forth your own endless barrage of projectiles. Option 2. While I wouldn't recommend this, you could instead challenge her projectiles by creating an evasion heavy melee build that aims to charge straight through her attacks. There are abilities that let you deal damage when you evade. Nola's axe, while slow, is an extremely powerful single hit option, so you could throw that on too. You might then top it off with some abilities that cause the freeze status effect so that you can get in one extra powerful hit every once in a while. Option 3. This is the final and most important option. Change absolutely nothing and hold forward until you win. The reason I say this is the most important is because it turns all of these options into just that. Options. They're not solutions that you must employ to win, they're choices that you can make to create the ideal experience for yourself. Maybe you know that a ranged build will be easier, but you'd rather charge in head first because that's more fun for you. It's entirely your call, and I think that's extremely important, as a variety of options without the freedom to use whichever one you want effectively invalidates that variety in the first place. The key here is that this is all just for one specific boss. You're able to alter your build and game plan every single time you run into a new one. You can find a single build that you feel is one size fits all, you can create a specific counter build for each boss, or you can never once open the menu and bash your head into the wall until whatever was standing in front of you no longer is. Yet there's still one last thing that perfectly complements all of this variety, and that is the lack of commitment in your build. At any moment, if you feel like your current setup isn't working for a certain boss, you can totally change it from the ground up by simply opening your menu at a checkpoint. All of this together is what makes the combat in Ender Magnolia so much fun. That feeling of figuring out a boss, not just their moveset but their own personal strengths and weaknesses, then developing a strategy that perfectly counters them is outstanding. What's truly special about Ender Magnolia is that despite being in an incredibly oversaturated field, it manages to stand out by learning from its predecessors and effectively mastering the genre. There's still a problem though. If you want to truly get lost in a world like the old Final Fantasy games or even Elder Scrolls, are there indies that can do that? These games are naturally smaller in scale, so are there really any that can take you on such a grand adventure with a brilliant narrative and a cast of colorful characters that you know the answer is yes. Chained Echoes is the best Final Fantasy game I've played since 2001. Although technically 2015, since I obviously didn't play 10 on release, I'm not that old. Anyway, much like the older Final Fantasy games, Chained Echoes feels like you're playing a video game version of some epic larger than life story. It's able to do this by utilizing both pacing and moments together, and it does so better than maybe any game I've played? I don't know, I'd have to think about that. Regardless, it's extremely good at this. There's this level of tension and release that makes each mundane moment feel meaningful and each critical point feel like this climactic culmination of everything that you've been working towards for the past few hours. If I were to draw out how this game's plot feels, it would look something like this. Each one of these peaks are not merely crucial turning points for the game's narrative and plot, but for the characters in the world as well. Perhaps more importantly though, it's a turning point for how you view the characters in the world. These twists and turns will constantly have you questioning the motives of certain characters, the true purpose behind their actions, and how all of this will come together at the next peak. The game will have this monumental event that you didn't expect, only to effectively go silent for a bit and give the player a quiet, peaceful moment to ruminate on what just happened. However, Chained Echo's story does one last thing that's going to be hit or miss with a lot of people. It doesn't tell a very safe story. There are some games that, despite being borderline flawless from a narrative point of view, still feel hollow due to how safe they are. They're doing everything right. The motives of each character make sense, the plot lacks any major holes, and everything is paced well enough. Yet, because they play things so safe, the story almost becomes forgettable. There are some narrative decisions in Chained Echoes that are not going to sit well with some people, but personally, I love the fact that this game was willing to make those riskier choices, because I'll probably be thinking about them for decades to come, much like I did for those classic Final Fantasy games. When you put all of this together, the pacing, the moments, and the willingness to make these bold decisions that stray away from tropes that we've seen for decades, you get a game that feels like more than a simple copy of the masterpieces that inspired it. As special as this game is though, in comparing it with the most recent Final Fantasy game for example, we can see the one thing that indies can't replicate. By virtue of being an indie game, they don't have an unlimited budget. They don't have an all-star cast of famous voice actors in a world with photorealistic graphics. With our current technology, you can't have a massive world with cutting-edge graphical fidelity made by a small group of people. If there were ever a valid reason that someone didn't play indies, I think this would probably be it. Objectively speaking, you just can't make an indie game like Cyberpunk right now. But if I may ask a quick question, does that even matter? I mean, not in a graphics don't matter type of way, I think they do. This is more about the point of graphics. And not just graphics, but music, voice acting, presentation, gameplay, everything. What is it all for? I think indie games know the answer to that, an answer that AAAs have forgotten. There will be no context for the two scenes I'm about to describe. I'll explain them in a way that should avoid nearly all potential spoilers, so while you can skip here, watching this next part should be mostly safe. We'll start with Deltarune. The scene here takes place in Chapter 4. There is a monster in this house. Your friends are here and they don't know about it. It's close though, and through the vents you can just barely catch a glimpse of it. Yet as desperately as you may try, there is nothing you can do to stop it. Run from room to room, sprint as fast and frantically as you can, anxiously search through this maze of halls and passageways for something, anything that might save those you care about. Nothing is going to work. The speed at which you move here is, by design, almost maddeningly slow. The worst part of all of this is that feeling of powerlessness. But then, as you scramble through the vents, something suddenly shocks you. Entering the next room where you believe the monster must be, you hear this. In this moment, a million thoughts were going through my head, and they all revolved around one simple question. Am I doing the right thing? Yet what's so beautiful about this question is that I don't think the answer is black and white. To me, Deltarune as a whole feels less accusatory of the player for having the sheer audacity to play this video game, and more like it wants you to think. It's not trying to give you an objectively correct answer, it's trying to get you to ask yourself a question. One line, that's all it took. Just one single line from a random faceless throwaway enemy. Never have I felt such strong emotions towards such a seemingly simple piece of dialogue, but the scenes that both precede and follow this line are among my favorite 10 to 15 minutes of any video game I have ever played. There is not one AAA game from the past 5 years that has even come close for me, and there are almost no video games in my memory that have elicited such a response. This moment asks you to confront the game's themes head on. It asks you to practice what you've been preaching this entire time. It directly causes you to feel the very same thing that these characters in the game experience. It's in this moment that you have to accept this idea that maybe the situation isn't as easy to overcome as you thought. Both of these scenes from both of these games force you to stop and genuinely think about what's going on. Not from a meta point of view. The games don't want you to feel guilty for playing them or for thinking the way that you do. No, they're instead trying to do what all meaningful works of art do. They're forcing you to look inward. It's as though the creators themselves are talking directly to you in these moments in a way that words could never convey. This is the point of games. Every aspect of a game should exist not to keep you addicted to a gameplay loop or make you spend as much time and money as you possibly can, but instead to ensure that you feel something. That's why Deltarune and Arco are so good. It's because each and every facet of those games, and of all great indies, aims to convey a feeling. It's why while indies are not on the cutting edge of technology, they are on the cutting edge of game design, of storytelling, and of games as an art form. I think it's perfectly reasonable to be upset about the current state of the AAA gaming industry. I mean, listen, candidly, I'm pretty annoyed too considering the current state of some of my favorite AAA series. However, with the level of quality that indies have reached, I genuinely believe that if you think we're in a bad time for games, you're just looking at the wrong ones. Now, people often say games used to be better, but is that actually true? Check out this video to see what makes a classic masterpiece outdated.